you have trouble coming across the bridge?
I did not, fortunately.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for being here. So,
okay, well, I'm going to go ahead.
Hold on. Betsy, you were trying to weigh in. What were you?
I was just going to try to open the finance committee meeting and then turn it over to you to perhaps run the meeting since you're physically there.
Okay.
But if it's okay with everybody, I'm going to go ahead and call the finance committee meeting to order. If we could restate who from the board finance committee is in the room or on the phone. If you'd go around and introduce yourself. I'm Betsy Benack and I'm on the phone.
Michael?
Mike Millett, present.
Catherine Starkey.
Janet Long. Michael is somewhere in the, was here.
He stepped out.
Debbie?
Debbie Leah, CFO of PSTA. Sue Ebner, TBARTA.
Alan Zimmett, General Counsel.
Brad Miller, PSTA.
And everybody else has been identified. Betsy?
I'm on the phone.
Oh, Commissioner Kemp, thank you for staying with us.
And Melanie Griffin.
Thank you, Melanie.
All right.
Commissioner.
Well, great. I don't know. Do we actually have a quorum in the room? I couldn't tell for those.
No, there's three board members that are sitting at the table.
Oh, okay. All right. And do we have any public comments either on the phone or in the room?
No. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak right now? I think no. No, there's no one.
Great.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Mr. Long, who was recently elected by our board as the Secretary-Treasurer for TBARTA. So I'm going to go ahead and let you run the meeting, if you would.
All right. Well, the first thing that's on this agenda, and Michael is not sitting here, says election of officers. I'm not quite sure what that is referring to.
I believe that is to name a chair and to, for the first time, have a vice chair.
Yes.
Oh.
Of the finance committee.
Of the finance committee.
And I would like to nominate Commissioner Janet Long to be chair of the finance committee.
Yeah, you can't take a vote because
We can't vote, but we can.
have to put it on another
She can say
meeting.
thank you.
I can say thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope I've earned it. We've certainly been working pretty hard.
We're going to have to put the election of the
You're
officers.
doing a
to the
great
next
job
meeting.
with your team
Right.
there. So.
Thank you very much, Betsy. And did I hear you say, Alan, that we need a vice chair? Is that what you said?
Right, but you can't vote on it, so you're gonna have to wait till your next.
I hear you, but we're gonna make a recommendation to the full board. We can do that,
No,
can't
this
we?
committee will appoint the.
Oh,
vice
it's
chair.
just for the members that are here at the board?
Yes, just for this board.
It's up to the
Just
committee.
for the finance committee.
Oh, it's just up to the finance committee. Wow. Look at that.
Mike, you want to be vice chair of the finance committee?
I'll accept the nomination.
Okay, I nominate Mike to be vice chair of the finance
Well,
committee.
actually,
Excellent.
Well,
Commissioner, you're not a member of the finance committee.
yeah, I'm
so
not a
you
member,
can't-
but I make that recommendation anyway. I told you I wasn't a member.
Well,
See?
can you be added?
I don't know. I'm just here for support for Janet.
Stop
She
that.
said, please stay.
You get that out. Michael, can you make that?
I will. I agree to that suggested nomination. Obviously, we can't vote, but I think it's great that we're going to have Mike be vice chair, and I think it's great that we're going to have Catherine Starkey to serve on the finance committee as well. I think that's an excellent suggestion.
TBD.
All right, so we will make that recommendation, I guess, to our next finance committee meeting. Is that what you're saying we have to do, Al?
Yes, you'll have to vote it at the next finance committee meeting.
Okay. Moving on from there, and thank you everyone for your support. We have a consent agenda to approve the minutes of the August 3rd Finance Committee meeting.
You can't vote on that.
And we
either.
can't vote on that either, but
But we'll just put that on the next agenda.
we'll put that on the next agenda and hopefully really try to schedule a meeting. How about, can we meet right before the board meeting? Just to get these things taken care of?
On the
Next
21st.
Friday? What?
Sure.
Is everybody going to the board meeting in Pasco next Friday? I'm seeing
Yeah.
Michael's
Yes.
nodding his head.
Yep.
I don't have enough time to notice it.
Every week.
You have a week?
In the paper?
No, this is a committee meeting.
Susan,
That's
why
only
didn't
governing
you
board
say
meetings
that?
that need to go in the paper. Committee meetings do not need to be advertised in the newspaper,
Right, just on the website.
just on the website.
What, I don't understand why we're still talking about putting advertising in the newspaper.
Governing board meetings are required by state statute to be advertised in the newspaper, but
But the
committee
board meeting
meetings-
has been.
Right, the committee meetings do not need to be advertised in the newspaper. We've got it, we got it taken care of. You can meet next Friday if you wanna meet like at 8:30 or 8:45, or you wanna meet after the board meeting, we can accommodate whichever one is your preference.
All right, so are we able, the members that are on the phone, are you able to be in Pasco County by 8:30 next Friday?
Yes, I will say able. So,
All right?
Yes.
I think we actually do have an October finance committee scheduled, do we not?
Yeah, October 13th or something.
October 19th.
19th?
I mean, the minutes could wait till October 13th.
Yeah.
All right, Brad is telling me that we have a finance committee on October 19th.
19th,
And it's already scheduled?
yes.
Yes. It's at 11 o'clock. Back here.
Yeah, because the budget really has already been presented to the board, so unless there's some changes, significant changes we're gonna hear about today, I don't think we need to make any motions, right, before the board meeting?
Well, do we?
I don't think so.
They're saying they don't think so.
You can recommend, obviously, the budget to the full board.
We can recommend the budget to the full board. Is that good with everyone?
Good with me.
Okay. Commissioner Kemp? Hello?
Sure, I'm not part of the committee, but sure.
All right, Debbie, do you want to give us the budget presentation, please?
Right. We did spend a bit of time talking about this at the last board meeting. But what I wanted to do today is to talk a little bit about a couple items that I wanted to draw to your attention, both in the operating and then also what is being proposed in the capital budget, and go in a little more depth. That up full screen. I'm missing a mouse here.
Need a mouse, Debbie?
I need a mouse, I need something. This is not There you go.
If you're wondering what we're doing, we're trying to figure
Find
out
my presentation.
why we can't bring the presentation up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured you were trying to set up a PowerPoint.
Yeah, it's there, but it won't click for some reason.
Technology.
Oh, right. Oh, it's on PSTA.
This one.
Should be the PowerPoint.
There we go. Okay, we found it. We're
And don't
good.
forget to speak up, Debbie.
I'm gonna try my best. I've had a cold for the last week or so, so I'm a little raspy. Okay, All right, so we're gonna be talking a little bit about a couple nuances that are in the budget I really wanted to bring to your attention. The first is I have included in the budget monies for TBARTA to be able to contribute to FRS should the new executive director choose to have the employees become part of it. There is no barrier to TBARTA becoming part of the Florida retirement system. I think it will make an excellent tool not only for retention but for attraction of employees into the organization.
So that could be a real benefit to our new executive director
I
as well.
believe so, certainly. And what I love about when I moved to Florida is you can actually vest in 1 year if you choose to do so, versus the 8 years, I believe it is, that I'm in. You've got me a few more years, Brad. So I think that'll be very, very good to do. The other thing that we just spent quite a bit of time talking about was advocacy and education. There is $150,000 in the budget for that. I think that is a very conservative budget to be able to do what we need to do both for federal and state, and I think that could also accommodate where we have the expenditures for travel to be able to go to Tallahassee and to Washington, D.C. within there. Now, the capital budget, we are going to be applying on behalf of TBARTA for the federal funds, about $3.7 million. Those funds will come from FTA to TBARTA, but it'll come through PSTA. So PSTA is going to do all the work on that. It requires a public hearing. We will be holding a public hearing on the 19th of September at 10:30 in this room on those projects. What we did is we put a host of different things into the grant. So we can move between these line items with no problem. Everything from what is the cornerstone of what TBARTA is doing today, of running the van pool, to time charges, which are called force accounts, computer hardware, software, contracts, planning, and to your point, Commissioner Long, as we start looking down the road with the BRT, these funds can also be used to help towards that. So we already have some seed money from the federal side that can go towards it, as well as I'd love to have some contingency as well as project management time. So in here, as I mentioned, we have about $1.7 million that can go towards our planning of regional transit projects. We have money for the van pool program, I'm sorry, Sue, and about $600,000 for computer hardware and software. You've noticed in the bottom right-hand corner, we're not quite that bad, but we're close. I think the personal computers and laptops that they have at TBARTA, how old?
10 years.
10 years old. So
may I ask you a question embedded in that 600,000, considering that we're not expanding greatly our employee base? Does the 600,000 also include training?
we have training dollars in here.
Because every time you upgrade anything, even your phones, it's a huge learning curve, at least it is for me.
It is for me too. We also have, which is an excellent point on training, we've got quite a bit of dollars, both in their operating budget and also through FTA, a total of $10,000 for the current staff, to be able to go to training, especially on FTA and what the requirements are.
Excellent.
Most of those classes are for free, but you have to pay for the travel through the grant. So we can do that. But one of the things that we are currently using at TBARTA is the QuickBooks program. And that is going to suffice for now, but I've put in $500,000 should we want to go ahead and put that towards some other software for them on an enterprise software basis. Another option may be down the road, and this is where the executive director will make the decision, if they want to use whether it's HEART's programs, PSTA's programs, we have packages, current enterprise packages, that can handle doing project management and tracking projects. So, but we do have $500,000 in here for software. The timeline of doing this is we'll go to public hearing coming up in September, in another week or so. And then we'll be submitting the grant applications. It has to go through processes of going through what they call the tip and stip processes. And then we should be able to have this all approved by January. And we've got pre-approval authority to be able to actually start spending the money, but it would have to come out of your pocket ahead of time should we need to do that. So are there any questions on the budget?
Maybe I have one question for you.
Oh, certainly.
It's something we picked up on at the last board meeting, for the $150,000 in advocacy.
Mhm.
Have we earmarked certain funds that are otherwise not restricted for those uses?
Those are going to have to come out of your local funding matches, and yes. So I've included that within there, and it meets our budget. Not an issue.
Okay.
So, yeah, we can't pay for any of that with grant funds in any situation.
Right.
So-
Yeah, and this is Betsy. So the training money that you were just talking about and the computer updates, those are in projects and not in operating, is that correct?
That's right. The FTA allows for under computer supplies, even though I might not consider it a capital asset. The FTA does and allow for that, and the training itself, again, even though it's on the FTA side, will allow for that so long as it is an FTA course or through the National Transit Institute course, and they will pay for everything.
All right, that sounds good. I mean, that obviously helps us in our operating budget to have that specifically allocated, so appreciate that.
Certainly.
Melanie? Is she still there?
Yeah, no, I'm listening, and Debbie and I also met about the budget earlier this week too.
Oh, good. Okay,
Commissioner Miller?
For the short-range planning item, it's $1.3 million. How firm is that? Does that forecast all of the anticipated study costs going forward just through 2018, or does that also go into 2019? Can you break that out a little bit?
This can actually, these grants go out for a maximum of 5 years. I do not like even getting close to 5 years. My goal is always go for 3 years, and if you run over, that's fine, otherwise you lose the money. And there can be extensions. That was one of the items that we had talked about. TBARTA in the past has asked FTA for extensions. But to me, if someone is investing this money into your organization, you have an obligation to really be good stewards and use it, or you should be giving it back. So this will cover for the next couple of years, or we could use it all in one fell swoop.
This $3.6 million, almost $7 million, is the accumulated federal grant funds that TBARTA has been building up over time, but not drawing down. So this is one grant, but it's a one-time only. Federal grants in the future will keep coming, federal formula funds at about $700,000 a year. But the thought process here was, since this is one-time money, to not fund, say, salaries necessarily, ongoing expenses, one-time money, Debbie has just put short-range planning in there, a pretty substantial number, so that the new executive director and then future TBARTA has a flexibility on that. Well, if the premium transit plan needs, money for design or whatever, that can be handled. If they need something with the van pool, that can be handled. It's really just kind of.
So it's sort of a hypothetical amount. It's not necessarily
Right,
Exactly.
a match to anticipated specific planning costs.
Right.
but Mike,
Not yet.
to bring you up to speed, because I think you missed the last couple of meetings, these are the dollars that have been left on the table since 2012, correct?
14.
Correct.
Yeah.
And just they never went after them.
Right.
So we're trying to make up for all of that we've been leaving behind
Sure.
to put us in a position to jumpstart going forward.
Yeah, I get that. I guess my only question was, is that $1.3 million, is that going to be sufficient? And if it's going to be sufficient, how do we know, without some kind of matching to an anticipated future cost?
And those are excellent points, because normally when we're developing a capital budget, we would come in, and on some of these, we've come up with some hard dollar amounts on here, whether it's software, et cetera. We can move between the lines if 1.3 isn't enough. You can tell it's an odd number because we actually backed into that a little bit here. And normally when you're developing a budget, Michael or someone at TBARTA would come back and say, this is specifically the project I'm going to do. Here's the project scope. Here is what they call an independent cost estimate that goes with it. And Debbie, this is what I need. Can you go find the money? And then I yell at them and get it down a little bit and we're all fine. So, you know, that's how it normally works. And this is sort of the first time we're trying to put some organization to the dollars. So we can refine this as we go forward, and we'll update it every single year. And the van pool program that you run through TBARTA helps to bring those federal dollars in the door. So the more we can expand that program, the more federal dollars that TBARTA will receive.
Yeah, and this is Betsy, and I just want to make sure, again, we have to remember that that these are reimbursable dollars for the most part, so you have to do the work and get reimbursed, correct? So it is a question of resources as well, not just dollars. You've got to have people that can actually do the work, or consultants or whatever, and then the issue's always been, you know, cash flow, how to make sure that we can, in fact, have money to run the organization while at the same time we're waiting to get these projects completed so we can get the reimbursement. So I appreciate PSTA being aware of that, and of course, you know, with these grants come our, you know, maximum percentage of can be attributed to operating, and I think that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about going after more, but at the same time, we've got to make sure we have the resources to be actually able to do the work, correct?
Yeah, yes, and may I say, what's the difference between running this through PSTA and Forward Pinellas is, Forward Pinellas would do their drawdowns every quarter. We can do them at any point in time, you know, that's how they chose to do it. So when, let's say we get a large invoice, and let's say the invoice is for the full $1.3 million, just hypothetically.
Mm-hmm.
The invoice comes in for $1.3 million. We prepare the drawdown, it goes to FTA, the money comes into the account, and then we have essentially 3 days to pay that bill. Otherwise, we start accumulating interest that we owe the federal government. So they can advance the payment for 3 days with no penalties, and we just have to make sure that money hits the account, a check is drawn, and we're good. So that takes care of the cash flow issues. Plus, we can do the drawdowns any day of the week, anytime.
Yeah, and that's always been the challenge for TBARTA was, you know, just who, it wasn't really easy to do that, and I understand from Sue that she's pretty well caught up, because we had also had a lot of outstanding invoices, and we needed to catch those up, and I think we're pretty close to being there. Isn't that correct, Sue?
Correct.
So,
Well, we are caught up, are we not, Debbie?
We are almost caught up. Sue,
I
why should I
think
say
she's
that?
talking about reimbursement
Oh, the
invoices.
reimbursements?
You're talking about submitting the reimbursement invoices, correct?
correct.
Yes. We are caught up, and now as Ellen sends them for the previously closed month, they are getting submitted immediately so that we're keeping on track.
Right, and it's not just the invoices, but actually paying our consultants, because, again, because it's reimbursable, work done, we've got to submit the invoices to the agencies to get paid, and then pay the consultants, so it's kind of a lengthy process, but I know that some of our consultants have expressed concern about, you know, outstanding invoices, but at this point, I think we're pretty much caught up with paying those off.
Getting
Getting
close.
there.
We're getting
Close.
close. But what we are really caught up on, and if you don't mind, that's a great introduction into the finances, is today is September 14th, and with the hard work of Sue and Michael and Ellen Fontana, who is here, who's their accountant, we were able to close August's books. So we will not be months and months behind. And in doing so, we look at it, we've got an $86,000 of net profit at the bottom line. We are well below budget because we haven't been able to get mostly some projects off the ground. We have less people than what was anticipated. So while we're well below budget, just even taking a look of revenues minus expenditures, there's $86,000. So that's excellent, good work on everybody's part. We're working to catch up. Starting this coming week, we are going to be having all of the invoices coming to scan to PSTA. We also have in our audience here today Julie Lupus, who's my accounting manager. She is a CPA, and she has been voluntold to help me. But she is very willing to help me out on all of this, and I think it'll be a great exposure for her as well as a help to TBARTA. So I feel very comfortable to have some cohort in crime here. So.
That's great. This is Betsy again, and I have just one question, and I know I'm probably interrupting your great PowerPoint that I can't see. But I did have a question on the attachment where it says budget versus actual for October 2017 through August 2018.
Yes.
On the local funds income, it says budget is 183, but actual is 242, approximately 1,000. What do you know what the difference is there? I mean,
It is
good,
your,
but I'm.
it is your, what we've accrued in here is for Alan Zimmett, and also for your recruiter that was not anticipated in the budget this year.
Did you
I
hear
guess
her?
because it was.
Did you hear her, Betsy?
Yeah, I don't know if I understand that. So income, 4001 local funds, the budget, my presumption is that's the budget that the locals were going to contribute, and they've contributed more. So who contributed more?
No one has actually contributed more yet. When you go ahead and record this, oh, and that includes the thank you, Ellen. And it also includes the MPO piece from Hillsborough MPO.
Okay. Okay.
So we've got our $200,000 from the partners and the $42,366 from the MPO.
Okay.
Great teamwork over
right.
here today.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the financials? Okay. Hearing none. Our last little bit here relates to the fine work that was done by Clifton Larson Allen. We do have Andrew here. I don't know if Andrew, if you want to say anything or have me dive in.
Sure, I can give a brief introduction. So those that were not privy to my presentation at the 824 board meeting, just to give some context behind the presentation that Debbie's about to make on the corrective measures that TBARTA will be taking to improve grant administration processes. This stemmed from a grant compliance assessment that we performed over the last few months, where we looked at all grants of 4 federal, 1 state, and evaluated all the applicable compliance requirements of each to make sure whether or not TBARTA was in compliance, and also evaluated internal controls over compliance. We had about 10 findings and recommendations that I presented at that meeting, and then I've been working with Debbie since and she's worked out the management's responses to that and those corrective actions that they will take to improve processes in the future. So that's kind of the impetus behind the work that Debbie's done in putting together those responses to findings. So I'll just turn it over to her unless you all have questions for me, and she'll go over what the responses are and what's going to be done in the future.
All right, thank you, Andrew.
Sure.
When I went through, CLA has made 10 recommendations in their review process. 3 of them are related to timeliness. 3 are related to putting costs in the correct places. And I will say I put them all together. 3 of them relate to following the rules and making sure that we have proper policies and procedures. There was an issue with the procurement policy, which I've already done a redraft. I'm kind of in the final review before I hand it over to Michael and our procurement director for a final review. And not going out and looking at SAMS.gov to determine and documenting, not them saying they didn't look, but it wasn't documented, that vendors are not debarred, and also doing an inventory of FTA assets. And then we had one, so we had sort of 3 timeliness, 3 doing things correctly, following the rules, and 1 of incomplete reporting requirements. A lot of this can be done, number 1, by staying caught up. Then it makes it very easy to make the reports timely. So we want to be doing the right work, we want to be doing it the right way. In your packet is a, which you can't see, maybe you've got it in front of you for those on the phone. But what we do here is at PSTA, which I'm going to take that same concept to TBARTA, is we do monthly reports. And I can pass one around if anybody, you've already seen these, but this is in your packet. And on these monthly reports that we do a brief scope of work of what the project is about, all the funding sources, we list out all the milestones, be able to accomplish the project, the timeline for those milestones, etc. So what we do is we have a sense of accountability that we are doing with this, that we go ahead every single month and update it. And let's say a project starts to slip. We then have to put in a recovery date and say what you're going to do that. The other thing is it does is in a very bullet point way, has a chronicle of everything from the beginning of the project to date. So that if someone should leave the organization, they're not leaving a little Post-it note with a smiley sticker on it on somebody's desk. Somebody else can come in and at least get a sense of the whole project, the history of the project, and where it's at. So that will cover and is used, and like I said, I developed this report years ago. FTA looks at it as a best practice. That will help for when we put things into the FTA system. It keeps the accountability on timeliness and accuracy. So what we're trying to work towards here at TBARTA is doing the right work in the right way, and then we can shout about all of our accomplishments.
Excellent. Very well done.
I think that I'm trying, we're going to be doing a lot of the work, so, and we'll be happy to work with any of the TBARTA staff. Certainly on any of the reports that have to be submitted along with invoices and drawdowns, we'll be looking to the staff at TBARTA to help us put that together as far as accomplishments report.
And maybe one quick comment. We'll formalize our report that has those 10 observations and recommendations and include management's responses to that, so you can see them in writing for future reference.
Right, and that should be in your the draft is in the package, and I know Andrew, you've already reviewed it, so.
Yep.
Any questions?
Great.
Excellent. All right. No questions? Betsy or Melanie?
No, I just think that sounds great. I think that I think the audit was extremely helpful, and I'm working as a team, getting these responses. I think that's really we're in excellent shape at this point. So I really appreciate it. Agreed.
Next thing you know, we'll be celebrating New Year's Eve for the new fiscal year, October 1st. I can't wait.
It's right around the corner if you think about it.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Thank you very much, Debbie, and I can't just say enough good things about the work that's been done. So, so we've got so now we've done the fiscal year 2019 draft budget, the financial report, and the audit report. Did you have more that you wanted to share?
Nothing unless anybody has questions.
We're just so thrilled that you've done what you've done and that it has all turned out the way it has. It's a great example of when you have lemons, you make lemonade.
Appreciate it, absolutely.
So,
Just to clarify,
yeah.
Why was the audit firm and gate agreement taken off the agenda? You might have said that already.
No, we love CLA, don't panic. But we were hoping to be able to piggyback off of our contract. Their contract is expiring, and there should have been an RFP done earlier in this year, calendar year. So I was hoping we could piggyback, but Alan Zimmett said no. So we're going to have to either get some, quotes or go out for RFP.
Doing a new RFP.
So,
Okay.
but
We're
we,
gonna have to
by
do
state
it.
statute?
Yeah. I sent you the statute.
Okay, thank you.
So is the intent to put that RFP out right away?
Right, and I've got one we can use.
Does that require board approval? Should that be on the agenda for the next
I
board meeting?
think, I don't think it, well, let
So,
me put it this way.
let me, so there's a specific procedure for hiring an auditor, so the board is required to designate an audit committee, which apparently hasn't been done before, so, next Friday meeting, we're gonna have on the agenda the designation of this committee as the audit committee, and then this committee acts as basically the, one to make decisions as to what is included in the RFP, what the evaluation criteria should be, how you're gonna, and you will evaluate the proposers, and then make a recommendation to the governing board, and the governing board will make the final decision. That's the process that state statute establishes.
And then to that point, Alan, I do seem to recall that we had a small conversation at the end of Andrew's presentation last month. Given that we'd never had an audit done before, that it was really something that we should continue to do. Would that be a recommendation from, I mean, you're the expert, Andrew. Do you do this on an annual basis normally?
Well, to clarify,
We
Chair-
always have.
Go ahead.
This is Betsy. We've always had an audit. We've always had the required audits that the grants require. What we've never had is what was called a forensic audit. And then I think we actually changed the term, but we've always had the required audits that have been done in the past. The audits have always, the contract has always been approved by the board. I wasn't aware that there had to be a separate committee by statute, is what I heard the attorney say, so I was gonna ask that question, but he said it's by statute, that there has to be an audit committee. So does the statute apply specifically to TBARTA, that we have to have an audit, separate audit committee, rather than just the board of TBARTA approving hiring a auditor?
No, it applies to charter committees, cities, charter counties, cities, special districts, school boards, and charter schools.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so, but no, I just want to
Special
clarify that we've always had an audit. Clifton Larson has been our auditor for as long as I can remember. But this year, as you recall, we had a discussion about having kind of this more intensive kind of forensic audit, if you will, which has been extremely helpful. But I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, well, thank you for the clarification, Betsy, but I think the one we had done this year obviously was a lot more in-depth than what we had done before, and I guess what my question is, do we think that that needs to be done on an annual
Yes.
basis? And Betsy is shaking, Betsy, why am I calling you Betsy? Because we have Betsy on the phone. Debbie is shaking her head, yes, that needs to be done on an annual basis. So is that a recommendation that we make to the full board, Alan, or we put it in the RFP? What is the process?
So first of all, the
Well,
audit
I
that's.
think, this is Betsy again, if I can, just for 1 sec, I just
Yeah.
want to say, I think specifically what Debbie's saying, and I agree 100%, is we need an audit for all of these grants to make sure that we're complying with all the requirements of the grant. So I don't know what to call that, maybe not a forensic audit per se, but I definitely agree with that.
Compliance, maybe?
Well, there should be an audit of the financials done every year to determine that we are doing them correctly, that they're reasonably accurate, and that we have the proper internal controls in place. And then there's triggers as to whether or not there are single audit requirements, which is an additional audit. And it's based on dollar amounts. But in any case,
Did we budget that in going forward?
we did.
So this is sort of additional or adjunct compliance budget.
That's part of really every audit.
Well, right, the single audit, there's a major program determination, so the auditors only look at those that meet a certain dollar threshold in their selection criteria.
Mhm.
What this was a full-fledged grant compliance assessment, where we looked at every grant, regardless of materiality of spend, and I think the frequency of that is essentially judged by the the risk profile of the entity. And so given the past issues, I think that's why there's consensus on performing this next year, just due to the higher risk nature. Now, going forward, 10 years out, is that going to be necessary to do a full-blown simulated single audit for every single grant of the entity? I mean, that's to your discretion, but generally, it's the risk profile that creates the need.
But probably, wouldn't you say, with the money coming in from the additional grants, we might hit some new thresholds within the single audit?
Right, and at a minimum
Sure.
too, to make sure that the recommendations from this previous report have been
Right.
implemented properly.
Right.
So.
Right, and that's something that we could do to just follow up on those specific recommendations, looking at those grants again, so there's some leeway on how we want to structure that engagement going forward. And that could be independent of the financial statement audit, which is performed annually,
And required by state statute.
as required by state statute, right?
So what you probably want to do in the RFP is get a quote for the annual financial audit and a quote to do this
Extra.
grant audit that like was done this year. And then each year, the board could decide if they want to do the grant audit. You have to do the financial audit every year.
And what I've done in the past for us is I have been, there's quite a bit that's included in our regular financial audit as well as single audit. But I allow for, with a table of additional costs by partner, by this level, that level of people, to do any other work that we deem necessary to do. So it kind of leaves it open. We have used CLA to cut costs significantly on telecommunications here at PSTA by at least $24,000 a month, I think. So, there's a lot of work that they can do that is outside the scope of the regular audit. So I want to make sure to keep that included, whether it's CLA or some other auditor, to be able to do that. So sharpen your pencil.
We try to pay for ourselves as best we can.
All right, are we good? All right, is there anything else that we need to talk about today? Michael? Catherine? Brad?
I would just like to say for next week, next Friday at the Pasco County Government Center, we're still going to start at 9:30 with no committee in it
Right.
before that. And it's going to be a tight meeting because we're going to have a couple of agenda items, business items to be approved, plus 4 interviews for executive director candidates, plus time at the end to discuss the candidates and make a decision possibly. I would imagine that it's going to go beyond lunch. Right now it's looking very, very tight to have only 20 to 30 minutes per candidate for an interview. That's 2 hours. I don't know if it's going to take longer than that or not, but
We can have lunch brought in if we want. There's a great deli right across the street.
Maybe we should plan for that, and then we can do a working lunch,
Yeah.
keep right on going,
Yeah.
and get done.
We can make those arrangements.
Yeah.
Talk to
Good idea.
Catherine.
Yeah, there's a great deli across the street.
I thought just FYI, because we have some TBARTA board members here, just prove prepared.
Thanks for
And
the
I
heads
have
up.
got to
Yeah.
be back in
Good
Pinellas
thought.
County at 2 o'clock, so hopefully we can get done by then, because otherwise it's gonna be problematic.
Well, hopefully approval of the budget and that this committee can serve as the audit committee are not big time, hotly debated items. I don't know, we'll see.
To clarify, Alan, this committee can serve as the audit committee, there's
Yes.
no conflict.
Right.
And I think as a measure of time, Alan, weren't we planning on designating the finance committee as the audit committee in October? Rather than next week?
I don't remember. That's fine.
I don't think there's an issue with deferring that decision for 1 month.
Okay,
So that may shave off a couple of minutes.
okay.
Did you say that you were gonna have the one meeting at 8:30 starting next Friday?
No, we decided we didn't need it.
Oh, okay, because I was
Yeah.
saying, if our meeting starts at 9:30, you could probably have that at 9, not 8:30.
And no, we're fine.
Save y'all a little time. Okay.
We're good, I think we're
Something.
good. Anything else? Melanie? Betsy, you still there?
Sorry, I don't have any
still
minutes on mute.
I think we're done. I think
Without it, if there's nothing else, we're in a position to adjourn. I hear nothing else. Well, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
What was that?
Is that an objection or get in the background?
Tell me.